What was my daily routine as a sales guy that made $1 million in straight commission selling at 12% at the age of 18? In this video today, I'm gonna show you exactly how I structured my daily calendar, what did I do every day on a daily basis to maintain mental peace, but also get shit done. I'll start it off to you guys this way. I'll explain to you guys how I made $1 million, and then I'll explain to you guys the daily routine. So for the longest time in my career, right, probably from the age of 16 till about 17 and a half, right, give or take, I was on 9% commission. We had some management changes, and then when I turned about 17 and a half, right, give or take, we went up to 12% commission. My routine when I was making 10K, 20K, 30K, 40K, doesn't matter what amount of money I made, it was always the same calendar, okay? And so what it would look like is every day at about 5 a.m., I woke up on average at 5 a.m. And yes, you do have to wake up early if you want to make a lot of money, right? You don't have to, but if you are a salesperson, you probably do. 5 a.m. I'd get up, I was in the office by 5:30 on average, right? So 5:30, I'm in the office. Now my office was like walking distance, so I got an apartment that was literally like 3 yards away from the office. And so every morning I got up at 5 a.m., brushed, showered, all that shit, and then I got into the office. Now one thing I would do when I was in the shower that I think helped me mentally is I would listen to Tony Robbins. I had a bit of a routine set up that every time I went in the morning, as soon as I entered my bathroom, I listened to Tony Robbins because it got me into a flow state, and it kind of got me into just a state of gratitude, abundance, wanting to actually go get shit done there. And you know, the music, the cinematic music, and then hearing Tony Robbins speak, it would help me a ton mentally. Now, 5:30 hits, I'm inside the office, start off with a little bit of caffeine. If you don't drink caffeine, no worries. If you're doing drugs, don't do them, right? So start off the morning with a little bit of caffeine in the morning just to get my day set up. I would spend about 5 minutes looking at my calendar. And so what I used to do is my setter would color code my entire diary, right? So green was showing up, yellow was probably gonna no-show, red was canceled or needs to reschedule. Okay, so I'd look at my diary and I'd be able to clearly tell who's showing up, who's not, who's confirmed, who's not, okay? I didn't go through any of the leads. I didn't really care too much about like, well, who's this lead? What do they do? Like, as long as I had notes on there before the call, I would just review them 30 seconds before the call. I didn't need to do a PhD behind every lead, especially because I wasn't in B2B, it was mainly B2C. 5:30 a.m., I'm in the office. By 6 a.m., I start calls. Now, here is the most fascinating thing about how I made $1 million. I did sales calls from 6 a.m. in the morning, and I did sales calls from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night. And I did that every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if you do the math on that, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., you're looking at, what is that? 9 plus 6, 14 calls a day on average. You do 14 calls times 7, 98 calls a week. 98 times 4 is 36. 36 plus 33 is 39. So on average, on a monthly basis, I did about 392 booked calls. Doesn't mean all of them showed up. I had about an 85% show up rate, right, on average. So I had a pretty good show up rate. 392 calls times 12 months, give or take, you're looking at a little bit over 4,800 calls a year. And I did this for 5 years, give or take, to make my first $1 million in a single year in commission. That was my routine. So 6 a.m. hits, I'm on sales calls back to back till 9 p.m. at night. As soon as 9 p.m. hits, I have an end of day meeting with my setter who was in Australia to go over the numbers, what went well, what didn't go well. Went to Chipotle, back then I was fat, so I got double, and then I went to bed by 10, and then I did it all over again. Many times I was up till 11 or 12 because I had to get more work done, I had to do admin, I had to do follow-ups, there was different shit I had to get done. To put this into perspective, there's nothing exciting about this, and nor am I gonna sugarcoat it and tell you guys I wasn't tired some of those days, or I wasn't exhausted, or I wasn't mentally wanting to give up. It fucking happens. Consistency is built when you can do a task again and again, day after day, until you can build stamina. So if you want to be consistent and you don't want to have to be consistent for the rest of your life, you have to build a habit. To build a habit, you have to build stamina, which means if I want to, let's say, go to the gym, and I go to the gym every day for a whole 2 months, I'm probably going to be very consistent with it. But if I only go sporadically throughout the days, then I'm probably going to be very inconsistent. And so some of you might look at this daily schedule and be like, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., that's a lot of fucking calls. And you're right, it is mentally exhausting taking sales calls for 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, years and years and years on end. But I have so much more volume than 95% of everybody out there that's in sales, right? Especially in my industry, because I just did more than all of them did. While people on average took maybe 1,500 sales calls a year, I did 4,800. So I did about 5,000 sales calls a year. You do that times 3 to 5 years, you're looking at over 25, 30,000 sales calls of repetition of working on the fundamentals, the skills, the volume. Now, every time I had a no-show, I did not twiddle my thumbs. I did not go jerk off. I did not go on YouTube. I either did follow-ups, outbound, or I did referrals, one or the other. So 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., the 14 hours a day, my metric of if I succeeded was this. And this is the only really metric of success I care about when it comes to work ethic, is talk time. Which means if, let's say, from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., let's say I'm working 14 hours a day, and I only spoke 5 hours worth of sales call, I did 2 hours worth of outbound, let's pretend. I didn't really work a 14-hour day, I worked a 7-hour day. I might have felt like I worked a 14-hour day, but in reality, I only worked really a 7-hour day in total. And so the key is, like, if you were going to get very good at sales and you were going to make a lot of money, and again, this is how I did it, it's not how everybody does it. I did sales calls every day, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, in order to build up stamina and consistency. And in order to do that, I only focused on one metric, which was talk time, which meant if there was a day where, let's pretend, I had less sales calls, I did more outbound, and I found a way to talk to more people. The more people you talk to in sales, the more likelihood you have of closing deals and making money. So your talk time is going to be the most important metric, okay? So the daily routine for me is very simple, and again, this is not one way to do it, this is a potential way you could do it. There are a million different ways of how you could make a lot of money in sales as commission. If I was selling solar and I was making, let's say, 10 to 15K a sale, I probably don't need to work these hours, but in my situation, I was selling 16K offer, 9 to 12% commission. I had to work these hours to sell it at these amount of units, right? So I had to sell on average 80 to 100 units a month in order to hit my goal of 100K a month. Some of you will look at this and be like, fuck no, Yash, I'm never gonna do that in my life, which is fair. Some of you might look at this and be like, you know what, I'm up for the challenge, right? And maybe that's your goal. Don't try doing this right away. You need to build up into this, which means you don't start off by doing 14 calls a day, start off by doing 8, then add it up to 10, then add it up to 12, then add it up to 14. To sustain this over 3 months is gonna be hard, let alone 4 fucking years. And so my recommendation is don't try to start this right away, try to edge yourself into it, try to go into it slowly. But this was my morning routine and kind of my daily routine as a salesperson, right? At the end of the night, I used to listen to Tony Robbins before I went to bed, so I'd eat a big old Chipotle back when I was fat, go to bed, listen to a bit of Tony Robbins for 20 minutes, I was off to bed. On average, I used to sleep about 5 to 7 hours a day, which I wish it was more like 7, that's why I'm 20, but I look 30, right? But the key you take away from this as a salesperson is your life isn't that complicated as a sales guy. As a sales guy, you are running your own business without any of the risks. So just go all out. If you want to make a lot of money, this is how I did it. I made 100 grand a month living this lifestyle at the age of 18. I didn't do it through stocks or crypto, or I didn't do it by working less. I did it by working more, and I did it by working within the rooms I had. 9% commission was fucking shit, man. I had to collect 1.2 million a month to make 100 grand collected. But I still worked the same hours at 9% like I did at 12. And then at 12%, fortunately, I had the ability to make it. And sometimes I get asked the question of like, do you think you could have made 100K a month at 9%? The answer is fuck yeah. I would have found a way to fucking break through that motherfucker if I had to make 100K a month, because that was my whole purpose in life at that point, was making 100 grand a month in commission. So this was my daily routine as a 7-figure closer in straight commission selling at 12%. Down below, there's gonna be a PDF where I break down more in depth of how my daily routine looked like in terms of my actual skill set of how I did my calls. So if you want that free training of exactly how I not only sustained this, but how I converted at a 55% conversion rate on 14 calls a day, click the link down below in the description. I have a free 40-minute training where I break down exactly how I conducted my sales call, even live sales calls of me selling, of how I was able to get to 100K a month in commissions with this routine.